Mark Few and Gonzaga are clearly prioritizing high-scoring wings on the recruiting trail. Will Luca Foster be the team's next Caliph battle?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, we're starting a fun off-season series today in the second and third segments where we'll be ranking the top 10 players to come to Gonzaga from the state of Oregon. We're going to do this for a variety of different states as well as for some different countries, different places across the world, as well as we've seen Gonzaga recruit so well internationally during the Mark Few era. So we'll talk about 10 great players from the state of Oregon in the second and third segments. But we are leading off the show talking about another recruit that Mark Few and the Zags have pursued, not a player from the state of Oregon in this case, in fact, a player from the state of Missouri, and that would be 2026 four-star wing Luca Foster. Foster actually received the offer from Gonzaga last week, so we haven't had a chance to talk about him much on the show, but wanted to give him some airtime here, just like we did last on Tuesday's show with Gene Roebuck, or on Wednesday's show, and as we've done throughout the last couple of weeks, as Mark Few and the Zags have been incredibly busy out on the recruiting trail, tossing out offers left and right. The 2026 class has been historically slow to commit, historically slow to take visits, so I think that combined with the fact that Gonzaga may feel they have a bit of an advantage financially in terms of being able to throw money at recruits while the house settlement is still so fresh and while so many programs are kind of trying to figure out what their budgets are going to look like. Gonzaga's just out there casting a wide net and going after as many different players as they can. And in particular, they're going after high volume, high scoring wings, which is not like Gonzaga has never had those players, cough, Adam Morrison, but even so, a Caliph Battle or a Julian Strother or others that they've had in the past. But it's not always an archetype they pursue so much like the way that they have this offseason on the recruiting trail. And Luca Foster is absolutely right in that range. Foster's a 6'5" wing from Link Academy in Branson, Missouri. He's originally from Pennsylvania. 36th ranked player right now in the 2026 recruiting class, according to 247 Sports. The other services have him very similar. They have 43rd at On3 and then 30th at ESPN. So his range is right in that 30 to 45 range amongst the three major recruiting services. He's gotten a lot of attention. The most notable school that has been pursuing Foster without a doubt is Dusty May and the Michigan Wolverines, who have offered him, who also are the only school to date that have an official visit scheduled with Foster. That is scheduled for September 13th. So when only one school has an official visit and there's not any strong indication that other schools are going to get a visit, you can understand why On3 is giving Michigan a 52% chance of bringing in Luca Foster. But Foster has plenty of other offers as well, not just from Gonzaga, but also Georgetown, Cincinnati, Oklahoma, Pitt, Penn State, Ohio State, Villanova, Vanderbilt, VCU. There's a few others as well, but that's the main list at that point. Again, only visit scheduled so far of the official variety is Michigan. He has taken unofficial visits to Pitt and Penn State, again, his home state. St. Joe's has gotten an unofficial visit as well, along with Georgetown and Villanova. So something to keep an eye on there. And again, looking at the scouting report, from what we've read, from what we've seen, from some clips, Luca Foster kind of is that Caliph Battle type, that high-scoring, high-volume wing. What he said, describing his game in an article written by 247 Sports' staff, he said, quote, "I'd like to call myself a wing who can handle the ball. I can knock down shots, play above the rim, create for my teammates, and play defense. I feel like I can do a little bit of everything on the floor." Joe Tipton, phenomenal reporter for On3, also watched him at the EYBL circuit, the Nike circuit, a couple of weeks ago. I think this was from July 13th. Joe wrote about him. He said, quote, "The 6'5" wing plays the right way, can score in a variety of ways, and stays composed. He's creative around the basket to avoid his shot being blocked and has the makings of a really good defender. He finished with 25 points and 8 rebounds. So once again, this is the type of player that Mark Few and Gonzaga are clearly prioritizing on the recruiting trail. We have talked about so many players over the last couple of weeks here on Locked On Zags, whether it was a Cameron Holmes, whether it was a Jalen Davis, Dooney Johnson, Hurley Brutus, Tyron Stokes, Bo Ogden, Gene Roebuck, Baba Oladotun. The list goes on and on and on. One thing that the vast majority of these players have in common is that they are wings between about 6'3" and 6'7" for the most part. They play off the ball, and they are high-scoring perimeter players. Mark Few's teams have historically been built on elite post play or elite point guard play. Yet the majority of the players they are pursuing right now through recruiting are not that. That doesn't mean there are not none of them. There are not any of them. Let's use grammar correctly. Sam Funches is perhaps their most notable target right now. He's a 7-foot center. He's clearly a low post back to the basket player, and he is very clearly a post player, not a wing. There's no disguising it. Sam Funches is a big man, and he is set to visit Spokane in October for Craziness in the Kennel. Gonzaga has been very heavily involved in recruiting him. Gonzaga is also in the top 8, for the top-ranked point guard in the 2026 class, 5-star Ikenna Elozi. So it is not that they are not pursuing point guards or centers, but the majority of the players they're going after fit in that kind of wing category. Not a lot of power forwards. It's pretty much 2s and 3s, and it's often guys who are high scorers. I think that's notable. I think when you see a shift, even if it's just a 1-year shift, I think you got to kind of pay some attention to that. Again, maybe it resets after this. Maybe the Zags are feeling like we don't want to go after a ton of bigs because they have Parker Jefferson, they have Ismaila Diani. Maybe they feel like they're better off using the transfer portal to add bigs, something they've done a lot lately with, of course, Graham Ike being a very notable recent example, Michael Ajayi. Granted, that did not work very well, but maybe that's part of the reason here. They feel like their best bet to get high-level wings is to get them out of high school, and they would rather allocate their attention in the transfer portal to centers and point guards. Maybe it's just maybe it is a coincidence. Like maybe there's not any rhyme or reason to it outside of these are just the players that they happen to really like out of this class. Maybe it has something to do with the house settlement and feeling like, hey, we're priced out of getting these high profile, like wing type players, but right now we're not. So let's go out and try to get as many of them as we can, or cast a wide net and see which ones we can bring in. Who knows? Like there's a lot, maybe they don't feel like they're going to have as much luck with transfers who play that position. Caleb Battle was one. They've had a lot of luck with these types of transfers in previous years. Tyron Grant Foster coming in this year as well. But there's a lot of different things that it could potentially be. But again, it's hard to not notice the connection here with so many of the players Gonzaga is pursuing, has been connected to, are offering scholarships to, or are even, bringing them on campus, trying to get them for visits. The vast majority of them are kind of at that 2-3 position. And I think that's worth keeping an eye on. And when we finally see what this class ends up shaking out like, who ends up being in the mix. I mean, it could just be as simple as Adam Miller's in his final year of eligibility. Tyron Grant Foster, if he does get a waiver, will be in his final year of eligibility. Jalen Warley is in his final year of eligibility. Steele Venters should, in theory, have more years, but it's not exactly clear how much he's going to be able to contribute or if he's going to stick around after this upcoming season. So it could just be as simple as Gonzaga really feeling like that's an area of depth that they need to pursue. But they do have Emmanuel Innocente. They do have Davis Fogel. So there are still some options for them there. But I do think ultimately there's something here when you start to see a pattern developing the way that this has with Gonzaga's recruiting in the last few weeks. It's probably not nothing. So I would say we want to keep an eye on how Gonzaga continues to spend their time and what kind of players they continue to pursue heavily on the recruiting trail, because I think it gives us a good indication of where this staff's priority is right now with regards to their high school recruiting, and potentially what it means for their transfer portal recruiting and various other kind of roster implications for this program in the short and potentially long term. We're going to move on. Like I said, some of the greatest players in Gonzaga basketball history over the past 25 years hail from the state of Oregon, my home state. That's why we're starting with Oregon. Produced 3 All-Americans for Gonzaga. We're going to start our countdown 1 through 10 coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, when I'm on top of my hydration, everything is better. My energy is better, my mood is better, my focus, even my skin feels better. But not getting enough fluids every day, it's not always easy to do. And that's why I've been loving Drip Drop. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven formula for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drinks. My favorite flavor is black cherry for just about everything, especially Drip Drop. It is a game changer after a workout or on those extra busy days. Drip Drop has become my go-to, especially during long summer days or when I know I'm going to be sweating it out. It's saved me more than once from that midday crash. And right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And like I said, having a little fun to close out the show here on these final 2 segments, talking about the top 10 players to play for Gonzaga's men's basketball program over the past 25 years who hailed from the state of Oregon. I want to give a few caveats here before we do this. We're talking about players regardless of how they got to Gonzaga. So if a player started out at their college career somewhere else and then transferred to Gonzaga, but that player was from an Oregon high school or was born in Oregon, they're still going to count. If you were born in Oregon, but you played high school somewhere else, it's still going to count. The one exception that we made here is Domantas Sabonis. Domantas Sabonis is not on this list. Sabonis technically was born in Portland, Oregon, but he was primarily raised in Lithuania. He played high school basketball in Lithuania. He was signed by Gonzaga as an international recruit. So I decided, I kind of hemmed and hawed about it, but it didn't feel right to count Sabonis as one of Gonzaga's like Oregon-born Oregon kind of recruits, because he's just so widely considered an international recruit, even if technically he was born in Portland, while his father, Arvydas Sabonis, of course, played for the Portland Trailblazers at that time. So if you're expecting to hear Sabonis' name, you'll have to wait for when we do a European version of this segment, because Sabonis will not be on here. So we're going to do the top 5 here in the second segment, and then we'll close it out with players 6 through 10 in the third and final segment. And I will be completely honest with you, folks. There are 5 players in this segment outside of number 5, who I think is fairly clearly, with no disrespect, but I think is fairly clearly number 5 on this list. 1 through 4 could be ordered so many different ways. You have 2 4-year guys. You have 1 2-year guy. You have 1 1-year guy. You have 3 All-Americans. You have guys who are franchise program icons in so many ways. You will likely not disagree with the specific order or you will likely not agree with the specific order that I have here. That's fine. That's fine. Let me know. Let me know in the comments why you like so-and-so ahead of so-and-so, whatever it may be. Happy to hear the reasoning behind some of those arguments. With number 1, first overall player here from the state of Oregon. He did not come to Gonzaga straight from Oregon. In fact, he actually played his high school basketball in Las Vegas at Findlay Prep, and then came to Gonzaga via transfer from the University of Washington. But he was born and raised in Happy Valley, Oregon. That would be Gonzaga great Nigel Williams-Goss. Nigel Williams-Goss, number 1, despite only playing 1 season at Gonzaga, it's just hard to deny the guy who led the team to their first ever national championship. It didn't feel right having him lower on this list. I thought about him at 2, but it felt like he's either at the top or you put him 4th because he played the least amount of games. And I looked at him at number 4 and I thought, this just doesn't feel right. It just does not feel right to have Nigel Williams-Goss 4th on this list. And the only other spot that really made sense to me was at number 1. Williams-Goss played 38 games in a Gonzaga uniform, all in that 16-17 season. He averaged about 17 points, 6 boards, 5 assists, and nearly 2 steals per game. He was a consensus All-American. He was the WCC Player of the Year. He was the WCC Rookie of the Year. He was the WCC Tournament MVP. He was NCAA All-Tournament Team, NCAA All-Region Team. As many accolades as you could pretty much grab in one single season outside of the Wooden Award. Nigel Williams-Goss gobbled them all up, justifiably so. He was outstanding in his one season playing for Mark Few and the Zags. He led the WCC in steals per game and free throw rate, and most notably, most importantly, he led Gonzaga to their first ever national championship appearance. And yes, that team was balanced. That team had significant depth, 1 through 9. They had a lottery pick coming off the bench in Zach Collins. Their front court rotation of Shemek Karnowski, Jonathan Williams, Zach Collins, and Killian Tilly was unbelievably good. The 2-point guard lineup of Williams-Goss and Josh Perkins was outstanding. They had an elite 3-point shooter in Jordan Matthews. They had another Oregon great who we'll talk about in the second segment coming off the bench as well. This team was great, but there is zero debate that Nigel Williams-Goss was the catalyst, was the primary reason that Gonzaga made that national championship appearance in 2017. Williams-Goss had 20 points in 3 of Gonzaga's 6 NCAA tournament games. That year, he had 23 and 8 against Xavier. He had 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists against South Carolina. He's continued to have a very prolific, productive professional career, recently signing with Žalgiris in Lithuania. Congratulations to Nigel, who I have placed number 1 on my list of Oregon greats to play at Gonzaga. Number 2 is the first of many players to come from Jesuit High School who is on this list. Another transfer to join Gonzaga after starting his college career somewhere else. A player who's a little bit polarizing in Gonzaga's history because, he was really good at playing on one side of the ball. Let's put it that way. This is Kyle Wiltjer. Kyle Wiltjer played at Gonzaga for 2 seasons, 2014-15 and then 2015-16. 74 games for the Zags, about 18.5 points per game, 6 boards, 2 assists, shot 45% from 3. He was a consensus All-American in the 14-15 season. He was WCC Rookie of the Year, 2-time All-WCC player, 2-time All-WCC tournament. And in fact, he was twice named the WCC tournament MVP, also only participating in the WCC tournament 2 times. He's the only Zag to average 20-plus points per game between Adam Morrison doing so in 05-06 and Drew Timme doing so in his final season. The only player in that stretch between there to average 20 per game was Kyle Wiltjer. He won a championship with Kentucky as well in the 2011-2012 season and was the SEC 6th Man of the Year in that 12-13 season. Wiltjer, again, polarizing for being more of a scorer than anything else, but one of the best scorers to ever do it in a Gonzaga uniform. He gets the nod here at number 2. Number 3 and number 4 are both older guards from early in Mark Few's tenure who are statistically far more similar than I thought that they would be, even though only one of them was actually named an All-American, which is why Blake Stepp gets the nod at number 3. Blake Stepp from South Eugene High School was at Gonzaga from 2000 to 2004, 128 games across 4 seasons in Spokane. He was a 2-time WCC Player of the Year. That's also a big advantage for him. 4-time WCC Tournament Team, WCC Rookie of the Year, and a consensus All-American in the 03-04 season when he averaged 14.5 points, 6.7 assists, 4.5 boards, and shot 37.5% from 3. Stepp twice led the WCC in assists per game, still 9th in league history in career assists, and had it not been for some bum knees, Blake Stepp probably would have had himself at least a decent NBA career. Unfortunately, was not able to do so. Number 4, like I mentioned, right behind Blake Stepp on this list, the point guard who was right before him playing at Gonzaga is Matt Santangelo. We're doing the past 25 years, so Santangelo's senior year it gets kind of wrapped up into these 25-year era, although he actually started his Gonzaga career in 1996. Prior to that, he was at Central Catholic High School in the Portland area. 131 games at Gonzaga. He was 3-time All-WCC, 2-time All-WCC tournament team, and 1-time WCC tournament MVP. He was also the conference Rookie of the Year in that 96-97 season. Led the WCC in assists twice, 8th in league history. By the way, Stepp was 9th in league history. So those two guys are both still hanging on to top 10 spots in the WCC's assist record books. Santangelo, the 11th most minutes played in conference history. He was the point guard on the team that went on that magical Cinderella run to the Elite Eight. The slipper still fits. Iconic team, iconic moment. Santangelo was the catalyst for that team. He gets a bump for that as well. It was tough between Stepp and Santangelo, but in my mind, Stepp being a 2-time conference player of the year and an All-American gave him a slight bump over Santangelo, but you could absolutely argue that either way. And I'm sure there are some fans who would argue both these guys over Wilcher and Nigel Williams-Goss for the simple fact that they spent all 4 years in Spokane, whereas those other two guys did not. However, if your primary argument is how many games did you play at Gonzaga, then number 5 would actually be number 1. Although, and again, with all due respect, Ben Gregg probably isn't reasonably going to be argued over any of these top 4 players. But Ben Gregg is pretty clearly 5th. He's pretty clearly a step ahead of the players we're going to talk about in the third and final segment, but he's also pretty clearly behind the 4 players that we've already talked about. That kind of solidifies Ben's spot right here. Ben, of course, started at Gonzaga in 2020. He joined the team half a semester early due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that causing the cancellation of his high school season at Clackamas High School, just outside of Portland. He played 141 games at Gonzaga, so again, that's 10 more than Santangelo played, and I think 13 more than Blake Stepp played. Only started 39 of those games, of course, all of those starts coming in his final 2 seasons. Averaged about 6 points and 4 boards throughout his career, but in his last season, averaged about 9 points and 5 rebounds, shot 73% on 2-pointers. Ben was just an elite role player. We're going to talk about some other role guys later on in this show, and Gonzaga has a tremendous history of elite role players throughout their program, but Ben Gregg is just one of the most kind of supercharged, talented role guys that this program has ever seen. Elite scorer around the rim, great offensive rebounder, good floor spacer. I know the 3-point shooting dropped his final season, but he was, prior to that, a great 3-point shooter, tough defensive player, diving on the floor, hard-nosed guy, just a really fun player to watch, a fun player to root for. Excited to see him begin his professional career playing overseas in France, as he's set to embark out there very soon after playing this summer with the Boston Celtics in the G League. So there you have it, folks. Top 5 Oregon stars for Gonzaga over the past 25 years. Nigel Williams-Goss, Kyle Wilcher, Blake Stepp, Matt Santangelo, and Ben Gregg. Ben Gregg, though, not the only great role player, like we said, to join Gonzaga from the state of Oregon. We're going to discuss the final names on this list, including a current staff member at Gonzaga, coming up here in just a second. All right, folks. Segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Closing out the show, talking about players 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on our top 10 list of the greatest Gonzaga players over the past 25 years to hail from my home state of Oregon. Like I said, we're going to have a heck of a time trying to do this for the state of Washington whenever we end up doing that. But we'll also try to take a look at this for some other states as well: California, Texas, Colorado, Idaho. I think for some of these states, we're not going to necessarily have 10. To be honest, we struggled to find 10 for the state of Oregon as well. But it's going to be a lot of fun to take a look at this as we kind of get into the slowest part of the offseason here for the Zags. Number 6 on our list is another recent role player for the Zags. That would be Silas Melson. Silas Melson came to Gonzaga from Jefferson High School in Portland. He spent 4 years in Spokane from 2014 to 2018. I forgot to mention this earlier. One fun fact I learned while doing my research here: the Zags have had a player from the state of Oregon on every single roster since 2009, which coincidentally, or perhaps not coincidentally, is the first year that I started at Gonzaga. So when somebody from Oregon, stepped foot on campus in Spokane, Gonzaga said, well, I guess we got to have somebody from Oregon every year from here on out. Got to give shout outs to Ben Gregg and Silas Melson for being guys who carried that load for a long time. And Melson, yeah, like I said, 143 games. So he actually played 2 more games than Ben Gregg did during his college career. 42 of them were starts for Melson, mostly coming in his senior year. All told, he averaged about 6.5 points, 2.5 boards, 1.3 assists. His senior year was that 2017-18 season. Ben Greg Melson, as a senior, started 37 out of 37 games, averaged 9.3 points, 3 boards, 2.2 assists, shot 37% from 3. Had some really big performances for the Zags that season in particular. I remember, and I went to look at the box score. He had 21 points against Creighton in a big-time non-conference game. I remember Gonzaga struggling in the first half of that game, and the second half started, and I think Melson scored on an easy lay-in immediately once the second half started. And I remember feeling like, all right, we got this thing. We're gonna put this thing in the bag. We're gonna put this Creighton team away. And Gonzaga ended up rolling to a fairly comfortable victory. And Melson had one of, if not the best game of his career against that very good Creighton team. Number 7 is perhaps the biggest fan favorite on this list. And that's maybe a bold claim because of the specific time that I was at Gonzaga. I know Ben Gregg has made himself a huge fan favorite. I know there's a lot of love for Stepp and Santangelo, and even for Melson as well. But I mean, nobody has ever forgotten Mike Hart. And it's hard to not feel like Mike Hart is still kind of one of the poster boys for Gonzaga's role player, like glue guy type mentality. Mike Hart, also from Jesuit High School. In fact, the next 3 players on this list, all from Jesuit High School. Hart spent 4 years at Gonzaga from 2009 to 2013, same 4 years that I was at Gonzaga. He's played 112 games for the Zags, started 37 of them. His total numbers, even in his best seasons, his numbers are not super huge because he didn't put up big stats. That wasn't really who Mike Hart was. I mean, in 112 games, in 11 minutes per game, Mike Hart averaged 1.5 points per game. That looks like virtually nothing. But his senior year is one of my favorite seasons of college basketball history to talk about. I could do a full show easily, folks. I could do a full show about Mike Hart's senior season. Maybe I will someday. Not sure how many of you will listen to that, but I might give it a shot. Started 19 of the 35 games for Gonzaga. By the way, the senior year was that 2012-13 season. This was the first time Gonzaga was ever ranked number 1 in the country. This is the first time they earned a number 1 overall seed. This was a team that had Kevin Pangos and Gary Bell, and of course, All-American Kelly Olynyk. They had senior Elias Harris. They had Sam Dower. They had freshman Shemek Karnowski on the bench. This was a good, deep, and talented team. And Mike Hart, who a few years previously had walked onto the team simply because he was working out with players on the team. He was just in the gym running with guys who were on the team, like Grant Gibbs and a few. I think Dimitri Goodson was still on that team, and he was working out with them. And they went to coach and said, "Coach, this dude's good. Like, he should be on the team." So Mike walked out onto the team and got absolutely bodied in his first year by Matt Bolden and guys like that. Put a ton of work in the weight room, and by the time he was a senior, he started 19 games for the number 1 team in the country. This does not happen very much, not just at Gonzaga, but in college basketball at all. It's exceedingly rare for a player to go from walk-on to starter, especially for a team of that magnitude. And Mike did it not by scoring a lot of points, not by drilling a bunch of threes. He did it by working his butt off defensively and becoming one of the most prolific offensive rebounders in college basketball. Mike won the WCC Defensive Player of the Year in the 2012-13 season, in a year where Mike averaged 2 points per game. He also averaged 3.9 rebounds, 1.1 assists, and 0.2 turnovers. He never turned the basketball over. He didn't score a lot. He didn't have a ton of assists. He didn't block a ton of shots, but he got about a steal per game. His effective field goal percentage on an extremely low volume was 77%. Mike shot 59% on three-pointers, and 60% on two-pointers. When Mike Hart decided to shoot the basketball, Mike Hart made the shots. He just didn't take. He's a little bit like Emmanuel Innocente. For fans who maybe don't remember Mike Hart, who are listening to the show, he's a little bit like Emmanuel Innocente. Ball mover, doesn't look to shoot very often, but was lights out whenever he did take his shots. One of my favorite individual performances of a Gonzaga basketball player ever was in one of the most devastating Gonzaga games of all time, which was their loss to Wichita State in the round of 32 in that season, the final game that Mike Hart played in his collegiate career. because against a team that had NBA players in Fred VanVleet and Cleanthony Early and Ron Baker, team that had multiple NBA players, Mike Hart had 6 points on 2 of 2 shooting. He took 2 threes and knocked them both down. And he also had 14 rebounds. Again, a player who walked on to Gonzaga 5 years previously was grabbing 14 rebounds, 7 of them defensive rebounds, 7 of them offensive rebounds against a team with 3 NBA players on it. What an incredible, very few other players on Gonzaga had a good game. That was the reason that they lost that game. And unfortunately, a reputation that it took them a long time to shake about, oh, they always lose early in the tournament, even though they didn't. That was the one year that people could point to and be like, they were a 1 seed who lost to a 9 seed. But Mike Hart was not the reason for that loss. He played tremendous, had an incredible career. Hats off to Mike, one of my all-time favorites, and one of the best players from the state of Oregon and from Jesuit High School to be in this conversation for Gonzaga. 3 more players to get to here. Number 8 is a name that will be very familiar to everybody, even if they don't remember his playing career. That is Brian Michelson. Brian Michelson, also from Jesuit High School. The next 2 guys are walk-ons. The last player was a recruit who didn't quite pan out for the Zags. Michelson played at Gonzaga from 2001 to 2005. Played 54 games, averaged just about 1.5 points a rebound per game. Michelson is far more known for his coaching career. He actually started as a staff member at Gonzaga, I think in 2008, was elevated to an assistant coach in 2013, and is now Gonzaga's associate head coach following Tommy Lloyd's departure to Arizona, and is the coach in waiting behind Mark Few. So Michelson's legacy will not be his brief playing career that was primarily in garbage time. It will be as a coach, but he still gets a nod here. Number 9 is another walk-on for Gonzaga, another walk-on from Jesuit High School, Matthew Lang. Matthew Lang spent 4 years at Gonzaga from 2018 to 2022, actually spent his final season at Arizona as he followed Tommy Lloyd to Arizona for his final year. Lang played in 55 games for the Zags, averaged just under 1 point per game in 2.7 minutes. Not much of a player for the Zags, but a fun walk-on that was easy to root for. And then number 10 was a actually fairly highly regarded recruit who just did not pan out whatsoever for the Zags. That would be Andy Poling. Andy Poling from Westview High School, played just 6 games for Gonzaga in the 2009-10 season, averaged about 2 points and 2 rebounds in 4 minutes per game. Transferred down to the Division II level to go play at Seattle Pacific University after that, where he finished his college career. Those are your 10 players from Gonzaga. Again, starting in the 2000 season or the 99 season or the past 25 years from the state of Oregon. We'll see if there's more that come in the future. I don't think a lot of Gonzaga's targets right now are playing in the state of Oregon, but Ben Gregg was a recent one. I'm sure they will have others in the not too distant future. This was a lot of fun. Like I said, we'll do this for California, for Washington. We'll see if we can make it work for Idaho and some of the other local states, and in Texas and Colorado and others as well. Thanks again, folks, for listening, though. That is going to wrap it up for me today. One more show to close out the week, and then we got some more fun stuff for you as we get into August, starting next week. Thanks again. Have a fantastic rest of your day, folks. And of course, as always, go Zags.